You're welcome back to the Gavel. Now, as I said earlier on in the program, the ministerial screening was a platform for the nominees to show us the stuff they are made of, and some did not disappoint. We're going to show you some major highlights of the screening.
We have probably a standing police force of about 500,000, less than 1 million in any event, to a population that is heading towards 180 million. So we are under-policed. And even if the federal government decided to take on this responsibility on its own, could it really do so in the micro level that is necessary at the state, at the local government, and all of those levels? My recommendation is a compelling urgency for decentralization. I have made those recommendations in some of the committees on constitutional amendments where I was privileged to make representations to you. There have been arguments about all of why we should not go there. But with respect, distinguished senators, those arguments do not go far. They do not address the fundamental responsibility that government has. I have had arguments that governors will abuse the police for political purposes. With respect, sir, the abuse for political power is not as important as the loss of life. That is our primary duty. And everything we do to advance that cause makes us more respected as the government that cares. And there's a process for curing abuse of institutions. But there's no process known to me today for recovering back life that is lost. And those are the choices that are before us as a people and as a nation. Now, at the state level, you can perhaps only wonder what governors are going through. They have parliaments that make laws, but they have no capacity to enforce their own laws. We are talking about women issues, rape, domestic violence. They are criminal offenses in many states and across the country. But who is prosecuting them? Because the police officer is too busy chasing a robbery. So our mothers, our daughters, and our sisters are expected to tolerate rape. Now, if we are afraid of abuse, one of the things that I have said is that let us start the state police working with the federal. There's a position that I have presented on it, but I do not want to take inordinate time. I proposed an arrangement where we had 6 zonal commands of the existing police force. States who want to run state police, and not every state should start if it can't fund it. Today, for example, I draw this quick analogy that the law on income tax is a federal law, but it empowers state governments to collect. And we can have those kind of amendments without perhaps necessarily going through a full constitutional amendment. States who now want to start, and our tax levels are different states, at different levels of development across the states. Our state police can start with things like domestic violence, rape. I don't know the last time any serious conviction for rape was made in any of our high courts.
Refineries are operating today at about 25–27% capacity. I know that there had been these whole numbers bandied around to the fact that we were at 65% performance levels, and that's not true, and I've advised His Excellency as such. My analysis over the last 6 weeks confirms a consistent, because the issue is not an upsurge issue. It is not that you do 65% in one day, then you do 0 tomorrow, then you do 25%. You take an average, and the performance levels are between 25 and 28%. Now, when I joined, the first thing I did was to put a clarion call to all the managers of our refineries. And I said, the success of your job depended on these refineries and how they work. If we can't run them, then we need to get out, make adequate arrangements to privatize them, and take them out. In any case, whenever you don't run a refinery well, every barrel of crude that you send into that refinery produces, you send a $45 crude, or today $52 crude. You produce an income of roughly about $15 to $20. So from point one, you're already losing money. And so we've instituted a process of not giving crude to any refinery that is not producing properly. Now, I've given a 90-day program which is working, and I'm glad that over the last 3 weeks, Port Harcourt, for example, has come out of that battles. and is producing right now at about 67% capacity. Our intent is to grow Port Harcourt all the way to about 70–75% capacity by the end of the year. So Port Harcourt is on that, and the prayer is that it continues. Now, Warri is beginning to signal that there's a likelihood they will come on stream, because right now both Warri and Port Harcourt, both Warri and Kaduna are short. Kaduna does not have an FCC problem yet. The difficulty was one of the pipelines. The pipelines were breached. We just finished the repairs on the pipelines. We're going to begin to pump crude into Kaduna refinery tomorrow. And hopefully over the next 4 or 5 days, they will get the stock that they need, to get the plants kicking. We will then know whether they are in a position to continue to produce seamlessly above 65%. If any refinery produces below 60%, it's not production. Because the reality is that the performing capacities of refineries worldwide are in the 90% and above categories, and that is when you begin to make yields that turn into a profitable refinery. So we're hoping that Kaduna, when it starts, will at least begin to benchmark on what Port Harcourt is doing. What I have clearly as a mandate will be that at the end of December, when the 90 days is off, we'll sit down and say which ones have shown a capacity to consistently perform at levels that make optimal sense. And those ones we'll let continue. We'll look at the management issues, tidy them up, look at the procurement issues and tidy them up. But those that are not, we'll have to shut down and do complete maintenance.
On the TSA, we actually introduced TSA in Ogun State in 2011. We had over 500 bank accounts, and we were borrowing. We would go to the banks for overdrafts. When we consolidated our accounts, firstly, we found over 2 billion naira. Some of it had been dormant for 10 years, 20 years. So the first thing we did, we recovered a lot of money, and I know that the federal government too has recovered a huge amount of money. The other thing that happens as a result of the TSA is that it reduces our borrowing costs, because suddenly, instead of borrowing, we became lenders. In fact, we were earning interest on the money. And I'm sure the federal government, I saw the Q1 2015 figures, it's positive. Rather than the government being a net borrower short term, it's now a net lender. Now, what is the effect of that on the economy? The effect on that on the economy is if government is not borrowing as much, interest rates should come down. And if interest rates are coming down, then businesses can borrow and be able to compete. So it's absolutely important. The TSA is an absolutely very important economic tool that we all need to support. Now, the question about the effect on the banks, I would say the banks are not in business to sit on government money. The banks are in business to go out and lend to the real sector. So when they're no longer having some cheap funds, the banks are very creative. They will get moving, they will go out, they will look at businesses that maybe before they would have rejected. They will look at them and now be ready to lend. So in the short term, there may be some discomfort arising from the TSA implementation, but long term, it's an absolutely critical tool. The other thing about the TSA is that it gives visibility of revenues. So we had a situation where some agencies have very creative ways of hiding money. You can't hide money with a TSA regime. Everything is seen. And then the question then is, what you want to spend, do you have approval for it? Rather than somebody just sitting down somewhere, no one saw his revenues, just spending. As the money is coming in, they're spending more and more. It's actually bad accounting, it's bad economics. So I'm a great fan of the TSA.